Continuing with the second chapter of the I Am and the Principle of Aseity, in today's video I want to speak about the next title, which would be the Holy Spirit / Ghost. This is one of the main topics of the book. This is why the book is called The Ghost of Jesus, because there is this allusion to the spirit or the ghost, as it is translated in some places. This is one of the hardest concepts to understand in the Christian narrative, and this is mainly because there's just not much information about it. It's a very mysterious concept that Jesus spoke about, and every church, every pastor, everyone who has tried to interpret the scriptures has tried to come up with something on their own. This is why we have all these different types of churches and different types of interpretation. Even today, you would ask a pastor, or you would see them in their own churches and in their own writings, in their own YouTube videos. They will give you a different explanation of what this spirit is. The core idea of this spirit is that you must gain it somehow. You must look upon it somewhere, and the spirit is gonna give you. They talk about it as some sort of energy, some sort of mood, some sort of guide. It's a very mysterious concept that we must analyze thoroughly in order to try to get to it. Before I move forward, I would like to remind you that if you want to join the growing discussion on consciousness and would like to be notified on the latest scientific discoveries and theories surrounding this topic and how they connect to ancient mythologies and philosophies, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, as I'll try to upload at least one video per week as I continue with the outline. Going straight into the passage, it goes like this: "And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to help you and be with you forever, the Spirit of truth. The world cannot accept him, because it neither sees him nor knows him. But you know him, for he lives with you and will be in you." John 14:16-17. On a first look, this seems like a very complex riddle that we must solve. If we look at it part by part, we can get a better idea of what he's trying to say here. He's saying, "And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate." Now, this idea of him asking the Father seems like Jesus is creating this spirit, is creating this entity by quote-unquote asking to the Father. Now, this comes as something very strange, because in the same verse it says that it's been with us all along. He's saying, "For he lives with you and will be in you." How can something live with us and will be in us? It's something very incongruent. It doesn't make any sense. It is a riddle, and we can just discard it and think that Jesus is crazy, doesn't know what he's talking about, or we can delete or remake the verse and turn it into something more understandable. This is one of the verses where we can see how easy it would have been for people not to understand the words and try to shift them around, which is the case in this verse, as I'll further explain into it. Before going into this shift in the verse, I want to bring up this idea of the spirit. What does the church tells us about the spirit, and how do we quote-unquote acquire it? One of the main ideas of this is through baptism, through this process of having newborns, being washed or bathed with water somehow in a strange ritual, and that's how they will acquire the spirit. Because in the story of enlightenment of Jesus, where I argued that there might have been an episode of an altered state of consciousness, just like the Buddha, it is said that he saw the spirit, right? And the spirit is represented by a dove coming from the sky, or a light, or something, some sort of realization, some sort of new knowledge or clarity that's people gain somehow, and then it is said that they have received the Spirit. But the common idea in the church is that you do it through baptism. There are other ways as well. You know, we've seen in the common churches where people just start preaching and they're saying they're gonna gain the Spirit, and they start dancing and shouting. It's a very interesting part of the whole ritual. It reminds me of the Greek idea of gaining the Spirit. I've talked about this in a video before. Enthos, I think it was the word that I used, where the word entheogens, which lead to altered states of consciousness, comes from. Is this being possessed by divinity. I'm gonna link this video, you can find it on the screen right now. It talks about this being possessed by divinity, and this is why we see in the modern churches people dancing or screaming or shouting. It's this whole idea of being possessed through some sort of ritual, through some sort of energy, through some sort of mood by the quote-unquote spirit, by divinity, by a realization. But now, if we go into the actual verse, we can find that on the last part of verse 17 of John 14, where it says, "For he lives with you and will be in you," the quote-unquote will be used to be in previous versions of the scriptures is not going to be. It is in you. Now, a lot of these modifications in the scriptures are done because things don't make sense. Like this, if Jesus were to ask the Father for something, how can he ask something if it's already in us and lives in us and is in us? So they had to change it to will be in you. And there goes the whole narrative, going through ways of getting this spirit that will be in us. But it doesn't make any sense. So if we take the previous version, the more original versions of the sayings, which says, "For he lives with you and is in you," then we can gather a new idea of this concept. Now, if we go through the whole outline, the things that we reviewed about the sayings of Jesus and the main ideas on how he seems to be speaking of some sort of pantheism, some sort of universal force, where he says, "I am in the Father, and the Father is in me, and I am in you, and you are in me," and he speaks about this whole cosmology of everything being somehow connected to each other. We could make the case that when he says, "For he lives with you and is in you," he is speaking about the same thing. If this thing called the spirit or the ghost lives with us and is in us and will be here to help us forever, we cannot accept him, we cannot see it, but we know it. We know it's there, it's with us, it lives with us. It's a part of being human. It's a mechanism within the human construct that he's trying to explain, as he's trying to explain the duality between the physical world and the quote-unquote spiritual world, more correctly, the world of energy. He's trying to explain all these things that he somehow acquired, that he somehow knew or managed to grasp an understanding of, and he's trying to explain them with common themes. Now, if we take all of this into consideration and we take the things that he says, he's saying that this thing is here to help us, would be with us forever. We cannot accept them because we cannot see it, meaning we cannot touch it, we cannot perceive it. It exists in us, but it's not a physical structure of our bodies. It's something else. So what is this thing that help us decide, that help us make our minds, that guides us? Because this is the purpose of the quote-unquote spirit. He's talking about emotions. He's talking as often as it is about consciousness. He's talking about this extra sensory perception part that exists within us. Now, some people may call this different ways. It might be called the higher self, the higher version of ourselves, our inner self, our consciousness, our emotions. It's a whole construct that seems to be mainly related to emotions, because emotions is what guides us in the world, is what makes us feel comfortable with something, is what gives us a bad intuition about something. We feel an emotion, and emotion is what guides us in terms of the decisions that we make in our lives. Now, of course, as I've been saying all along, this is not about New Age. This is not about thinking or trying to make something up. I got this conclusion through understanding how emotions work in the brain. Now, if the main argument against this, of course, would be, oh no, emotions are something that we can touch. They are in the brain. There's a mechanism in the brain that gets activated on specific emotions, and this is why you get these emotions, and you feel them through your body somehow, vibrations or whatever you may want to call it. And it's something that is predetermined and that is somehow structured within the brain to trigger these emotions and in response of fear or etc, things like that, right? But these theories have actually been corrected by the most recent experiments and the most recent theories, because now we have more technology to actually try to understand these things. So we have, I'm gonna quote Guggenheim Award in Neuroscience receiver. This is one of the persons with the latest theories on how the brain is wired in terms of emotions and how emotions actually work within our bodies. Of course, she says that there's still a lot of textbooks and you're gonna find articles just pointing out of how these emotions are wired in the brain, and this is what materialists will say about this. But she goes on, quote, "Somehow, through a mysterious process that nobody understands, physical movements inside your body become mental. You feel generally pleasant, unpleasant, or anywhere in between. You feel calm or agitated. Your mood is like a barometer for the health of your body. It's with you every moment of your life, though much of the time it's in the background and you don't notice it." This sounds eerily familiar to that description Jesus makes of the Spirit. It's the same thing. We have an award winner scientist saying, somehow, through a process that no one understands, all these things happen and helps you determine and helps you guide you towards your experience in this world, but you don't know it. It's in the background. Jesus says this about the Spirit, and we have an award winner scientist saying this about the intricate structure of how our emotions work. In the next video, I will go thoroughly into her theory and try to explain how these ancient verses connect to the modern theory and how they are basically speaking about the same. But the very fact that either Jesus or this award winner scientist were trying to reverse engineer the human construct is on its own a thing to ponder upon. If you're on the path of finding the truth about reality and our purpose as humans on Earth, the information that I have to share concerns you. After a lifetime of research in philosophies ranging from Buddhism to the occult, I've encountered themes and patterns along some baffling information that is beginning to be seriously studied by science. A Rational Divine Outline, The Ghost of Jesus, is the first iteration of this project, where I analyze the message of Jesus without dogmatism, fanaticism, or religious bias. You can find my work available on Amazon on the link below. If you find this work valuable, consider subscribing, sharing, and following me on social media, as it'll help others in the same path to find this information. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.